The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt has sold over 40 million copies, making it the 14th best-selling video game of all time. And that is really nothing to be disappointed about. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is available on PC, Xbox Series 1, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo Switch isn't usually something you would see here. With a lot of massive, top-selling AAA games, it's not common for them to actually put them onto Nintendo Switch. Now at launch, the Nintendo Switch wasn't actually out yet, it was still 2 years off, but they did eventually port this over to Nintendo Switch. And this wasn't just a small port where they just had a scaled down version of the game with not all the content. This was a full port with all of the content, all of the DLC, the full game on Nintendo Switch. And this wasn't a cloud version like we've seen with some other games. This was the full game available to play anywhere on the go. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt released on Nintendo Switch on October 15th, 2019. This was about 4 years after Witcher 3 Wild Hunt had released, and about 2 years since the Nintendo Switch had released. When it arrived, there was a standard version and a complete edition. The standard edition was basically the standard version of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It just had the base game, no DLCs, of course it had the free DLCs, but nothing else with it. And then the complete edition had every single DLC that there had been. So this did include Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. Now since this is on a Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch isn't very powerful, it's not anywhere near the power of something like a PS4. So it's really not going to have the same graphical capabilities compared to the consoles and PC, of course. So in this video, we're going to buy The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on Nintendo Switch, load it up, play through it for a bit, and we're going to see if it's worth purchasing. So I'm going to be playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on Nintendo Switch, so you don't have to. But before we do get into all of that, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content just like this. Subscribing is free and it will really help out the channel, so thank you, and getting into the video. So first of all, I had to actually buy the game on Nintendo Switch, and to do this will cost you £30 or £50 in the UK if you want to get the standard version, which is £30, and then the complete edition, which is £50, but these will each cost a little bit more if you want to get them physically. Now I was actually planning on buying the physical version and then unboxing it in this video, but there was actually a deal on the Nintendo eShop for Witcher 3 Wild Hunt where they were both 50% off, so I went and got the standard edition for £15, or I could have got the complete edition for £25, but I didn't think the DLC would really be necessary for this video. So you may be wondering why these prices are so much higher compared to the other consoles and PC. Now there is a big reason for this. When it comes to playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on the go, there really isn't any other options, or there isn't anything as good as playing it on Nintendo Switch. So Nintendo are able to have pretty high prices for this. Obviously you are able to find it for very cheap prices on console and PC, but when it comes to Nintendo Switch it is quite a lot more. Now that's not to say that it isn't worth it. I do think that it is worth buying, especially if it is the only way that you can play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. But it is a lot more compared to playing it on a different platform. Now we do actually see this with other games on the Nintendo eShop, like Mario Kart 8 for example. After many years, that game is still able to maintain its high price simply because there's no other way to play the game, and as long as people are still buying the game, which they are, it's one of the best selling games every month on Nintendo Switch, then Nintendo have no reason to lower the price. And it's a similar story with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. There's not really any other way to play The Witcher 3 on the go, so when it comes down to it, you can't really get it any cheaper and you just have to buy it for that price. Obviously they can't have it too expensive because then no one would buy it, but there is a certain price that they can have it where people will be a bit reluctant to buy it, but there's no other option, so they're still going to buy it. So once I bought it, I then had to actually install it, and this would take up 14.5 gigabytes of storage, which isn't really bad at all. Obviously in Nintendo Switch you don't really have as much storage compared to other consoles, but then again games don't take up nearly as much storage as they do on other consoles, so it sort of evens out. So this did take up 14.5 gigabytes, which I really don't think is that bad, and it is a substantially less amount compared to on console and PC, where The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt will take up about 50 to 60 gigabytes. So once it had downloaded, it was time to get right into the game. When you do load the game up, it's going to feel like playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on any other console. It's going to pretty much look the exact same at this point, and it's going to play the exact same in the main menus and just going through all of the small flash screens in the menus, and it's just going to feel the exact same. And like I said earlier, this isn't a scaled down version of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt content wise, it's the exact same as playing it on a decked out PC. The only difference is going to be performance. So in the menus there are two really nice features, and one of those is cloud saves. Now this will allow you to transfer your PC save, just PC, not any other console, to Nintendo Switch and continue where you left off. For example, you might be halfway through the story on PC, you can just upload that save to the cloud and then download it on your Nintendo Switch, and you can just pick up right where you left off. This is a great way to just continue where you were on the go. And if you wanted to, you could then transfer that save back to your PC and pick up where you left off. The only disadvantage to this, which is something that puts me off of doing it, is that achievements won't progress. So say you earned an achievement on Nintendo Switch and then transfer that save back to PC, then you won't get that achievement on PC. This is because on The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, achievements are obtained upon the action actually being completed. They're not really save progress or anything like that. So that is the only annoying part of this, that you won't be able to transfer achievements between different platforms, but it is still a really nice feature, and it's something that I don't think was expected of CD Projekt RED. I don't think that people buying the game would have expected this to be a feature, or at least I really didn't expect this to be a feature, but it is just a really nice addition. And there is another small thing in the options which I really like, and that is being able to slightly adjust the settings. You can slightly adjust the graphical settings, which you can't actually do on other consoles. I would keep pretty much all of this at default, except I would just put the sharpening to low. I wouldn't put this all the way up or anything like that, because it could lower the frames, and it is worth noting that the maximum frames for this game are 30. Now this is the same on PS4 and Xbox One, so you really wouldn't expect anything different here. At the moment, the only thing where you can get above 30 FPS is on PC, so 30 FPS really is fine, and in my opinion that really is a playable experience. So the gameplay you have been seeing on screen is from the Nintendo Switch version of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, so you are able to see the difference in graphics, and I'm not going to go into a comparison video. There are loads of great comparison videos out there already comparing the different versions of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, so I really do suggest going to watch those. We're not really going to get into that in this video, but I do think this is really impressive, just being able to play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on your Nintendo Switch wherever you are, and especially with this being an offline game, you really can just do this wherever you are. This is really nice. And like I said earlier, there's no cut content from the other versions of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. This really is the entire game. And The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt isn't just any small game, this is a massive game and one of the biggest games of all time, and having this on such a small device is really impressive. So now let's actually get a little bit more into detail about the graphics. Now obviously the graphics aren't amazing, they're definitely not as impressive as on PS4 or on PC or anything like that, but they aren't that bad, and especially if you have the OLED Nintendo Switch. Now the OLED Nintendo Switch will have the much more vibrant colours, and I really do think that is the best way to play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, but don't go ahead and buy a OLED Nintendo Switch just for this game. That really isn't worth it. If you do have either the standard Nintendo Switch or a Nintendo Switch Lite, then you will still be getting a great experience, and particularly on the Nintendo Switch Lite, because the screen is so small on that device, then you won't really be that annoyed about the lower resolution. You won't really be able to notice it as much, which is really nice. And it is a similar story when it comes to the graphics. You won't really be able to notice as much that the graphics aren't as high compared to consoles and PC, simply because the screen is much smaller. And I do suggest across all the Switches that the best way to play it is in handheld mode. Now this is because, like I said, you won't be able to notice the lower resolution as much compared to if you have it in docks. If you have it in docks, you really can see the lower graphics and the lower resolution, which might be a little bit annoying. Obviously it's still playable and I still think it is a good experience, but I think it's better in handheld mode. However, there is one advantage to the docked mode, and that is a big one for me, and that is being able to play on an actual controller. I'm not really a big fan of using the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode. I find it quite irritating in a way, having the controls on either side of the screen, but that is just me. Some people really like handheld modes, and it probably is the best way to play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on Nintendo Switch, but it honestly is up to you. You might prefer playing it in docked mode, and that is absolutely fine. Just play whatever you feel works best with you. So maybe you're thinking this is the best way to play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and no, it definitely isn't. course, there is a Steam Deck, but I'm not really been including that in this video because I don't really want to include that. It's got very limited stock and it's basically like playing it on PC. Yes, you can play it on the go, but I just don't think it's quite the same. I think when it does come to playing it on the go, I'd rather go in Nintendo Switch. The Steam Deck is very bulky and it is very hard to get, and a lot more people have a Nintendo Switch, so yeah, I haven't really been including that in this video if you've been wondering that. Now, this obviously isn't the best way to play The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. You could play it on a PS4 and you would get a better experience, but when it comes to playing The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on the go, then I do think it is the best option. Now, if you do have a PS4 or an Xbox One or a PS5 or a PC or anything like that, obviously that is a better option and it will be cheaper, so definitely go with that. But if you want to play this on the go, say you go on a lot of trips or something like that, then this is definitely a good buy. And it is just The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. There's not really much else to say. Yes, it doesn't have quite as good graphics and the frames aren't quite as good, but I don't really notice any major stutters or anything like that that makes it unplayable. It really is a good experience. And when it comes to the game, like I said, this is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. There is no cutbacks or anything like that. And yeah, the graphics aren't as good, which I've just been through, but this is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It has all the content and this is the game, and the game is amazing. So I do definitely recommend The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt for Nintendo Switch. Now, hopefully you now know whether you want to buy The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on Nintendo Switch, and I do hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content just like this. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.